All right, I think it's already 5:06, so I think we can start. So, for the viewers, I would first of all, thank you for joining and welcome to another episode of Kitaabi Baatein. And I'm Abhishek, also known as Books Wale Bhaiya. And my guest today is author Pragati Deshmukh, and this is her latest book, A Dark and Shiny Place. And yeah, it is really a scary thriller, horror. It's a mix of many, you can say, genres and emotions, I would say, with fear being the dominant theme. That's what my view of the book is, and definitely a very good read. So before we start, I would like to give a brief introduction of Pragati. So Pragati Deshmukh is a storyteller who also moonlights as a corporate creative executive. With a commerce background, she ventured into the world of film, TV, and digital entertainment 2 decades ago as a happy accident. She has worked on numerous TV shows and Oscar-nominated film, and currently heads web series for a leading OTT platform. A Fauji kid with a rock-table personality, she takes most pride in her core values, and she'll never give up on a story waiting to be told. So, Pragati, to begin with, I think it's a very detailed description as I read about you on the net and in this book itself. We can say a multifaceted personality with varied interest and your education, your job, and everything. Who is the real Pragati Deshmukh in her own words?
First of all, good evening, everybody, and it's lovely to be here today with you. I think the real me is as transparent as it is. It's right there in front of all of you. I'm really the person who I'm a very private person, but at the same time, when you see or read anything about me, that is really me. I do not carry too many various personalities in me. I can say that I had a wonderful, wonderful childhood. Being an army child, it's been a privilege to grow up in the Fauji family. I've been blessed to meet a wonderful husband and have lovely in-laws. And कहते हैं ना जिस घर से निकले वैसे ही घर में गए. So I think I've been also very lucky and very blessed with fantastic workplaces, colleagues and friends. I cannot say I have anything to complain. So very, very grateful for that. And I think to know me a little more, it will be interesting if you could maybe read my novel and tell me if you see glimpses of the personality, because a lot of me is in there.
Wonderful. And I think it's really a great way to introduce oneself, because rarely do we come across people in today's life who seem to be at peace with who they are, what they are. So that's really interesting. So talking about your first book, I understand you are in this creative field since long, and you are now in the OTT industry and all. So being in the creative field, being in, you can say, in some way or the other, in the storytelling field, so why is it that it took you quite some time to write your first book?
So I've been in the storytelling or the creative industry of the entertainment industry actually for close to 20 years now. It's been 19 plus years. I have been a part of multiple projects, films, web series, TV shows, and the joy of creating stories for screen is really something else. It's so much of visualization. It's a team that comes together to brainstorm, to be able to translate what's in one's mind as imagination, actually put it out there as screen. Also, it kind of takes up a lot of time, and it's creatively so factory, that job of mine, that it never pushed me to a place of being hungry creatively that I wanted to venture on my own to do something else. So truth be told, like I said, I've been blessed in many ways in this too, touch wood. It took me some time to know that I love writing. Writing is a passion, and I have been writing since I was very, very little. When I was 13 years old, I started writing my first novel. It's a different story. It's still incomplete. But yes, I did. I used to write for my school paper, and I think it was really the lockdown. It was the pandemic that gave me the time to stop and focus and say, okay, now is when I can really focus on putting that story out there in the form of a book. It was very, I must say, it was a milestone of a decision in my life because I always thought I want to write a book. I never thought I would actually finish it and publish it. And people would receive it with so much love and acceptance. That was something I really did not expect.
So coming to your book, A Dark and Shiny Place, I'll be honest, when I first picked this up, I thought it will be like a usual, thriller. But as I read, I realized that, you've been able to, have a book with many genres, as I mentioned at the very beginning. It is thrill, it's horror, it's also delves into the realm of psychology, as if you talk about the protagonist. So how do you, as an author, when you would have started writing, how do you see the thriller genre in India? Is it like maturing? Is it the same as it was, say, 10, 20 years back? Or how do you see these particular genres? In fact, both thriller and horror, because in a way they both are related to an extent. Every horror story, I would say, would have some amount of thrill in it. How do you see these genres? Do people still read a lot in terms of thrillers and horror, or do they prefer to watch it, on celluloid only?
So I'd probably break this up in two parts. I think whereas writing a book about a particular genre was concerned, I didn't really plan it that way.
Oh,
I'm an avid reader and I love Agatha Christie's and Stephen King, and I've grown up on these books. So thriller and mystery and horror is my personal passion, my personal favorite genres. Um, After that, when I actually started working in the entertainment industry, we started curating stories. As a platform executive, also the amount of data that we collect in terms of studying the pattern that the audience like to
right,
watch. More and more it emerges that thrillers are something that people enjoy, and hence you look at the films and you look at web series
right,
specifically that are actually so popular across the globe. It's not just in India, are really the thriller and mystery ones, because it's a constant, rush to see up kya hoga, what
exactly.
next, right?
Right,
It's just human nature that we enjoy that thrill so much.
right,
But of course, you need to lace it with, romance and characters and relationships, because
right,
without that, it's sort of hollow, sort of empty if it doesn't connect with you
right,
emotionally.
right,
So I think combined these two, my passion for these genres and my whatever understanding and learning from my professional work when I um, when we were going through the lockdown times, right? Like, I really don't have much to complain about because we were in a good neighborhood. My husband and I had just moved into a new apartment. But when I started listening to a lot of stories that people were talking about, and I was reading about a lot of despair that, overall the world was going
yes,
through, it really led me to question, what if I was there in that situation? How would I deal with it? What would I go through? And that question led me to actually create the central plot of the
right,
story, A Dark and Shiny Place, which is about Maya, the protagonist,
right,
being, trapped in her own home, having
right,
supernatural experiences, telling you as audience as a first person narrative. So she's telling you exactly what she's feeling
right,
and what she's going through. And as if we could relate to Maya, who is feeling helpless, somebody who is not sure what is going on around her, and then midway when we switch the narrative to her sister, who
yeah,
is in another country,
right,
who is Mira, who is so helpless, because that's what most of us felt through the pandemic, through the lockdown. We felt
right,
helpless.
exactly. And
So I think that's how it really came together.
right, because I
Sorry,
can
you were saying.
reflection, you talked about the pandemic, and as you said, you yourself moved into a new apartment. So yeah, the life events also, what we see, what we observe, do play a role in, and it happens with almost every writer, because whomsoever I've interviewed, they do say that, what you write is in some way or the other reflection of either yourself or, the happenings of the events around you. That is bound to
Absolutely.
get, reflected. It's very almost next to impossible to be, completely disconnected to the life around you and write something. And that's indeed a very, very tough task. Maybe a very mature writer may think of, but otherwise it's not at all possible to, isolate yourself from what's, happening, and you're writing it absolutely, on a separate note. So when you say you talked about this book now, interestingly, how important do you see for a thriller or a horror to for the characters? Because many times the novels stories are about characters. Even history, if we read, it's about personalities, because it's the
Yes.
people who created history. This book in particular, and I think in general, I've seen, especially with horror, the personalities to an extent take a backseat because the narrative that counts more. After all, someone who's reading has to feel fearful. So no one, you can say, admires a ghost, but what they like is the thrill or the fear which the book generates. So how do you see writing a thriller or a horror book being different from writing any other novel?
Uh, that's a very good question. Honestly, since it's my first book and it was my attempt to bring together complicated
Right.
genres, I don't know if I'm qualified enough right now to answer this question. I'm still exploring myself.
I must say,
What
honestly, reading a book doesn't makes me looks like you're not qualified enough. It is. So, because I could
that is,
see that, you focused on the narrative part, which, so,
I think, I mean, for me as a process, I just went with the fact of who are my characters and what is the situation that they are in.
right.
Once you know your characters well, they sort of start talking to you and telling you themselves how they want to deal with the situation, what their reactions could be.
Right.
It just becomes organic and authentic, as you, it's like people, your characters, like you rightly said, they are always inspired by, real life incidents or people or yourself. And that is the important part, that when they are authentic and they're believable, they become real people in your heads. Then
Absolutely.
they are not just some fictional names somewhere. They become personalities, living personalities. And I think writing a book for me was, I lived with them, with my characters in my head, to a point where sometimes it was difficult for me to differentiate my personality and Maya's personality. Sometimes I would be like, wait a minute, am I behaving
Right.
like Maya? And I have no reason to behave like her, but
Right.
why am I behaving like her?
Right.
So when the characters become so real for you, it becomes organic to know how they'll react and what it can be. The challenge for me in that whole thing was, in the whole process, was to keep the, honestly, was to keep the the constant thrill or the constant hook in terms of subplots, because sometimes I would get so carried away with the characters' day and what they were feeling and how they
Right.
were dealing with things. Sometimes it would also become very, very dark and very grim. So the challenge was constantly to bring them back and say, okay, no, no, you are experiencing something supernatural. So, let's look at the ghosts in your house.
Right. No, no, that's true. So as I read the book, I initially, as you can say, almost 120 or 30 pages, I looked at it as fear as the key narrative, because you get a sense that it's all in her head. She's maybe hallucinating or whatever, and then I think it delves a bit into the realm of psychology, because of the story. As the story goes, she was imagining things and all, and yeah, now as people are still getting a little more mature in terms of the mental health issues, and as well. So instead of saying someone like someone who hallucinates, saying ye pagal hai, we have moved to understanding the needs of that person, that okay, this is also a problem, but yeah, it can be tackled. So how do you see building this novel, this story, through these two narratives of fear and psychology?
So I've always seen them as two sides of the same coin. I'm not an expert in either, right? And most of us are not.
Right.
So I think what was was important. In fact, I will tell you this very interesting incident that happened with me. I was watching a movie called The Exorcism of Emily Rose. Have you watched it?
Yes, yes, yes.
Correct. So it's a classic, right?
Of course.
And then I was very fascinated by the story, the courtroom trial that happened in real life about that story, and the parents and the priest. So I started reading a lot about it. This is many years ago. I was probably in college, or I was not. I was just fresh out of college or something, and I was reading about all of that. There were real tapes available, recordings available on YouTube, and I was listening to all of those. And that really got me thinking that if there is so much truth and merit in what they were saying, in exploring that it could either be a supernatural phenomena or it could be psychological, it's, something that was something related to mental health. I wanted to really explore that more. And since then, it stayed with me. As it stayed with me, as I grew up and became more and more, mature and interacted with people and understood life a little more, storytelling. I think my reading in this just became more and more solid, and more incidents and stories I read around it. So it was a very, it just came to me very naturally when I started writing this. It started with my favorite genre being thriller, mystery, horror. It progressed into the fear. You're very right about fear, and I'm so glad that it reflects the way it does, after you reading it and telling me. Because truly, writing this book stemmed out of my fears that if I went through something like this, what would I do? How would I
Right.
deal with that? So it really did stem from a lot of fears, the writing and the character and how it was born and that storyline. And from there to go into hearing all the despair around me, I wanted to open conversations around mental health.
Right.
So while I'm no expert, but as a common person, I want to simply have people read the book and at least wonder that have I been through something like this or remotely like this? Do I know somebody who may be experiencing something like this?
Right.
And just have a conversation.
Right.
We don't have to necessarily, like you rightly said, ki, now we know hypnosis and, you don't just brand people ki, acha, ye pagal hai.
Yeah. Right.
But even today, I think we don't know how to have the right
Of course.
conversations. We don't know ki, kya sawal पूछना चाहिए. If somebody is not, if we think somebody is not doing okay or somebody is in depression, a lot of time we are worried ki, kya पूछे? What do you
Exactly.
ask the person?
Exactly.
Right? So while I understand this fear is legit, but it is still important to simply ask, how are you? It's
Right.
just that, right? I
No,
think
no, of
that was
course.
important.
Of course. So, as I said, many genres, you have psychology, and yeah, it's important that, writers like you are bringing this up. I recently read Deja Karma by Vish Thamijaji, and that also brings up the topic of, mental health. Interestingly, he wrote it quite few years back. This was a relaunch of the book. So yeah, and we talked about fear, which is, I think, an essential part of such genres, whether it's psychology or horror, or because if there's no fear, of course, there is no fun in reading actually. If you don't feel fearful, it's like you watch a comedy movie but you don't laugh. So fear
Correct.
is, if we talk about horror as well, because there have been scenes, instances in your book as well, which makes you think it in terms of it being a horror. The characters don't exist in real life, but as the protagonist sees them, talks to them, brings them home, and they have a tea and coffee. So that horror element is there. So especially talking about horror, because all of these are some way or the other related. How do you see horror as a genre? I mean, why I ask, because horror as a genre was largely introduced in India through cinema. And the Ramsey brothers were like the pioneers, and they were writers, but I think it gained prominence only when people started watching the movies, and that's why I think it was largely introduced and popularized in India. And now we have authors who are writing horror. So your book, as I said, it's a great mix of various genres. But we have pure horror writers as well. Neil De Silva is one of the, Anita ma'am is there. So how do you see this particular genre picking up in India?
So horror, I think as a genre, you're right that the Ramsey brothers brought it to mainstream. Before that, it was of course Hitchcock. But in general, it existed in every little household, every corner, every small little town. We have grown up with folk tales. We've grown up with haunted houses.
Yeah.
We have grown up with stories of chudails and pisach, bhoot. It is, whether it was possessions that we've had since I don't know, decades.
Yeah.
Temples are known for, mosques are known for exorcisms. So it is something that has been a part of our growing up as a society and evolving as a society as well. It is only with time that study came by and they started proving certain supernatural aspects as a play of science, or quantum physics came into play, and so on and so forth, right? I do still believe that there are certain, like it's not very different. What today is still supernatural is probably certain amount of science that we haven't, got to explaining so far. It could be, I mean, it's an argument, it's a debate depending on which side you want to look at. Coming back to your question of horror, I think horror, because inherently it touches upon the fact that the thrill that the adrenaline that you feel as a viewer, right? Bachpan mein we used to sit with our grandparents and say, "Bhoot ki kahani sunao aap."
Exactly.
It is the same thing. It's the same thing. It's just now translated into screen. So even if people are scared, they'll probably want to sit with 5 people, watch behind the chaddar leke, blanket se thoda dekhenge, thoda chupenge. They'll still do that, but people still want to see it because of the simple thrill that one feels. So it's a popular genre.
As it is said, the forbidden fruit is always the tastiest one. And
absolutely,
in my last conversation with Balaji Vittal, and we talked about villains of Bollywood, crime fiction and all, and he said that the fact of the matter is that I completely agreed with him. The fact of the matter is everyone deep inside wants to be a villain. No one would mind, sitting on piles of cash with some beautiful girl sitting around you, and you being complete in control of things, the police, everyone feels fearful of you. Somewhere inside, everyone wants to get a taste of that life. And somewhat similar logic applies to horror, that no matter how scared you feel, you want to experience it. You may say, oh, this ghost is all rubbish, but deep inside you feel, you want to get the taste of it, of that fear. So I think it's the same logic. Somewhere you feel, having it in real.
I think इतना जब इतनी बातें होती है ना एक चीज के बारे में, it's like a phenomena that it's such a mystery to everybody. So for anybody to say that, oh, I experienced it, or oh, I know somebody who went through it, it just makes you feel suddenly very, I don't know, in a strange way accomplished, I would say. But it finally boils down to the thrill of it.
The thrill of it, because everywhere you see, even in office or colleagues say, I had a supernatural experience, मैंने ना ये देखा था, ऐसे हुआ था, it happened with me. So people are, there's certain thrills, some lure, some attraction is definitely there. All right, so you talked about Stephen King and other writer Agatha Christie. So any other favorite authors of books which you enjoyed a lot, as you said, you are a voracious reader since childhood. So other Stephen King, of course, is one of the most well-known horror writers. But any other favorites other than these two?
I think this is a very difficult question, because it's like somebody asking me which is my favorite movie or favorite song, because there are so many. It's so difficult to say. But I think I'm definitely a fantasy buff as well. So Lord of the Rings is something that I would pick up on a rainy day and just pick it up and just open any page and start reading. There is one of my all-time favorite books is called The Discovery of Heaven. It's by Harry Mulisch. If you have not read it, please do pick it up.
I have not read it, but I'll do that. Yeah.
It is one of the most quirky and yet deep philosophical novel that I have ever read. It is set during the
Mm-hmm.
wartime, and there's politics, there is relationship, there's drama. It's a fantastic book called The Discovery of Heaven. There is, of course, the Nancy Drew that I grew up in, the Nancy Drew and Famous Five and Blyton. I mean, those are all books that I grew up with. I personally enjoy reading Richard Bach books. I
Oh,
enjoy,
that is
yes,
undoubtedly
yes. In fact, his one of his lesser popular novels is called One,
one. Yes, yes.
which, yes, mostly people know of Jonathan Livingston Seagull, but One is something which is very, very interesting because it talks about parallel universe and it talks about the choices that we make in life. Correct. So if you read it, so you will know exactly what I'm talking
About
about.
it and people don't know. I find it surprising how come we haven't read that one. I mean,
Correct.
it's I would say
I think it's probably
a good book. That's what I would like to talk about it.
yes. When I get a chance, I gift people that book, saying that okay, if if I know remotely somebody is interested in that genre, then I would give them One instead
Great.
of Jonathan Livingston Seagull. So yes, there is one of my all-time favorites, which I read as a child, but I still read is The Little Prince
Mm-hmm.
and Lord of the Flies. There are some Robin Cook was one of my favorite authors as well.
Right.
Have you read Robin Cook's books?
Some of them, yes, yes. The
Yes,
medical
the
thrillers he was
medical.
known for, yes.
Correct, correct. So yeah, I think that's, and I could go on, but
Yeah, of course, he was a great writer, and I remember I read Sidney Sheldon's "Nothing
yes,
Lasts Forever," which was a hospital based, and that
yes,
led me to explore more of Robin Cook.
yes.
Wonderful. So the next question, as you are in the OTT industry, I call it the OTT industry because it's an industry in its own. How do you see, the form writing is taking with the help of OTT? Because there are many movies, or sorry, novels which are being adopted into OTT series and stuff like that. So how do you see how is OTT helping, say, the writers or the publishing industry?
So OTT is truly a writer's medium. It's a creator's medium. It is probably still that one place that you can push a good story and characters and still have really authentic stories out there. So I think it's a great place. It's a good balance between television and films.
Right.
So it's currently I would say a paradise for creators.
Certainly. I remember recently at a HarperCollins Bookstagrams conference, the separate team which deals with adaptations, and
Yes.
they also talked about it. In fact, very recently we have this Jane Jan, who's an
Yes.
adaptation of I'm forgetting the name.
Suspect X.
Yes. So
Yes.
yeah, and I think we're seeing more. But how do you see the future of OTT? Because now as pandemic is hopefully over, and so people are going back to cinema halls as well. How do you see the future of OTT? And yeah, there are certain voices which are a little not that much in favor of OTT because of lot of content which they feel is not suitable for family settings and kids and all. So not, I don't know if that leads to some form of censorship or not, but how do you see the future with all these aspects coming into play?
So I think any kind of audiovisual medium is a constantly evolving medium. Like television has seen its own journey
Right.
in the past 25, 30 years. Film has seen its own journey in the past 25, 30 years and more, I would say. Similarly, OTT is also going through its own journey. It's too young right now
Right.
to even say that this is what it would be. Right now, let's just see where it's going. The good thing is that it's a place that you can still tell a lot of good, authentic stories.
Exactly.
Uh, so that's a big positive. Whereas certain complaints about it, some shows not being family oriented. Well, the reason is because it is the only place that you can make all kinds of
Right.
stories and all kinds of shows.
Right.
It still has that freedom, right? So let's see where it goes. I wouldn't want to right now talk about that. I think the OTT industry is too young, too new. It's still finding its footing,
Right.
but it'll evolve and it'll be good. Whatever it is, it'll be positive.
Right. So yeah, I think many writers as also they say the same thing that and they do expect things to get better and OTT may be gaining more prominence in the future, despite the challenges. And as you rightly said, it's at a nascent stage. It's you can say it started the boom started only with the pandemic era, wherein more and more people. So yeah, it's a nascent stage, and let's see.
I
And
think
okay, so one
Uh,
go ahead.
sorry, I think what is going to be, though, a very interesting time is going to be that all these mediums will now find their own balance to coexist because, like you rightly said, OTT got its boom through the pandemic because obviously there was a lockdown and the theaters were shut. But now, when everything is sort of normalized and life is getting back to normal, they will all find their own strength and their own niche.
Right.
So it'll be actually a great time for content creation because there will be some kind of an outlet and some kind of a platform, whether it's OTT or it's films or it's television or whatever it may be, short form, long form, everything will have its own space to be able to be showcased.
Right.
And there is going to be no better time than now to be creating content, whether it is writing or it is translation, it is adaptations. It's a creator's world.
Right. And it may be a little early to ask, but you have plans for your next book, and if yes, when are we? Because I'm definitely waiting for it after reading this. So, by when can
Thank
we,
you.
in the next year?
So, so I am in the process. I am actually working on the second draft of my second book,
Oh, one.
and I am hoping that by mid next year I will be ready to share it with the publishers to be able to move forward with it. I'm really hoping that I will stick to my timelines and work around that. I also have the story for my third book ready.
Okay.
So that is just it's very very nascent stage because only the story is complete. So that has to still go into a manuscript format. But yes, definitely, I must say it's addictive writing books. It is
Right,
addictive.
of course. And if you can disclose that, will it be in the same genre of thriller and all, or is you planning to write something entirely
So,
different?
so thriller, yes. Genre is slightly different. In fact, I could probably tell you a little bit because my second book is so overall, my work, my body of work, whether it's been in web series or it's been in film or whatever, I have always um, tried to work around social causes, some kind of goodness, some kind of change in whatever little way that we can bring to
Right.
the world in general. And so my second book is called Traffic right now, and it's really to do with the whole illegal wildlife trafficking that's happening,
Oh,
that has been happening for many, many, many decades. And I think it's important that we tell their stories. It is important to bring forward how important environment and the animals are. So
right.
it's based on a lot of research and facts. It's a fictional story, but inspired by certain true events and true characters, real life NGO workers.
Mhm.
So yes, that's I think I've explored the whole man-animal conflict, and so that's primarily what my second book is about.
Wonderful. I think I'm definitely looking forward to it after reading your thoughts. So yeah, let's hope we get it in the next year itself. And what challenges did you face while getting a first book published? Though you worked in the creative industry, but with no track record or pedigree when it came to writing. So you faced any challenges in selling the story to publishers?
Yes, yes, absolutely, I did, and no qualms about accepting that. It was, and rightly so, because I am a debut author, and I may have created a lot of screen content, but I have not written a
Right.
book before this. So when I did send my, I wouldn't want to name the publishers, but when I did connect with certain editors of some traditional publishing houses, there was a wait list, there was a certain amount of time and certain amount of clauses that I was not okay with. And they're not wrong in their place. It was just not something that I was willing to work with. And then I got really lucky with the right order, because they have been absolutely lovely as publishers. They are back. They are backed by the whole distribution of Westland Books and Pratilipi. They come under the Pratilipi umbrella. So it couldn't be a better deal for me. So when that happened, they did not want to creatively interfere in what I wanted to complete and publish as my book. They gave me suggestions. Obviously, they gave me great suggestions. And some I also did take from them. But at the end of the day, they said, it's your creative baby.
Right.
And they have given me the entire might of their organization in terms of distribution. It's my book is available globally on Amazon. It's in all leading bookstores across cities in India. It's in Crossword. I couldn't complain. I mean, there's nothing for me to complain. They've been absolutely wonderful. So yes, the struggle was before that trying to crack a traditional deal, but I would say the right order have been just absolutely outstanding.
That's great to hear. So as you have experienced that facing rejections, I think, which is at times many first time authors do face, and you wrote this on your own, what suggestions would you like to give to aspiring authors, those who are writing their first book or are in the middle of it, or maybe planning to write their first book?
So I think the first thing is that don't judge yourself until you've finished your story, until you've finished your manuscript, because be kind to yourself. It's your time. It's your first time, maybe. So first of all, just complete your story, and don't give it to anybody else to read and judge it unless and until you are sure that this is the story that you want to tell. Once you've finished it, because that's what confuses us the most. That's what makes us most unsure about ourselves. So that's the first advice, that finish it, complete it, no matter what it takes, every day or every other day. Take some time out, and little by little, it doesn't matter. 2 words today, 1 page tomorrow, just complete, finish it. Once it's done, and then when you go through it, and then when you start taking it out to people, be very open to constructive criticism. I think that was one big learning for me. I'm one of those people who starts with criticizing my own work way too much. I'm very how should I say? I'm a little harsh on myself, and my husband had to tell me that it's okay. Be kind to yourself.
Right.
And I realized that when people were giving me suggestions, and the constructive criticism was great, but don't don't question yourself beyond a point. Don't lose objectivity. Have that faith that what you have done is good, and creative work is always subjective. Some people will like it, some people will not like it. It's subjective. So I think that is a primary thing. Once it's there, today there are 100 ways to publish your book. Whether a publisher backs you up or doesn't back you up, you can self-publish it. If it's good, it will find its place.
Yes.
People will appreciate it.
No, I completely agree. I think that's quite a positive note. So I think we are almost towards the end of the session. I would like to ask the viewers who all are watching it, if any questions, you can please write in the comment box, and I'll take it up with Pragati. So let me check if there are any questions already, or if they are not, guys, all those who are watching, please feel free to write questions in the comment box. Okay, so there is one from Prashant Pandey. Did you have a writing plan or a schedule, and how do you deal with writer's block?
Hi, Prashant. Yes, I did have a plan. Honestly, I when I decided that I wanted to write, I struggled. I struggled with discipline. I struggled with timings. I really struggled with sitting on that chair and focusing. And then I just started waking up between 3:30 and 4 every morning. I would wake up and I would just force myself to wake up, have that cup of chai, and just sit there. With time, my body just got used to it, and I just automatically started waking up. I couldn't go back to sleep. When I would sit there, I would write a few pages, and then I would work for a couple of hours, and that was it. Then through the day, I would not think about it. I would not go back to it. I would make little notes, whatever ideas and thoughts would come to me. But I was very clear that there was a certain time that I had to sit down and work. If I didn't do that, I tried to sit down whenever thoughts came to me, and that actually threw me in a complete dizzy, because I was uh, I was disoriented and I didn't have a plan in my mind, and that became very difficult to stick to the discipline. So it was important that if I dedicated a certain amount of time, and the time of the day, that is the only time I would work on the book. And then from there on, I kept a deadline. I said, I need to finish my first draft in the next 4 to 5 months. If I don't do it, then I don't think I'm finishing this.
Right.
And I knew for a fact if I don't do it, I will not finish it. So for me, that end goal was very important. So whatever it took, I finished my first draft. And then I, of course, revisited. So that was broadly what worked for me.
I think that is definitely an indication of, great discipline. And, because I completely agree, it's not at all easy to write a book, because people actually see the end product. The hard work which you did in the background, no one actually knows or understands that. So I think.
And I think just one thing I want to add is it's, and now because I have written it, I can say that it is not so difficult as a task or as as something to do right. What stops us is ourselves.
Right.
It's the self-doubt that we create in our own minds constantly.
Right.
We make it so big in our minds, saying that it is difficult to write a book. Honestly, it is really just, it's like walking. You take one step every day. Okay, you may not take the right step, you stop, you sit, you'll turn left, you'll turn right. But that doesn't mean we stop walking.
Exactly.
Writing is really a lot to do like that.
Great. So we have one more question. It's from free.param. Which part of this journey has been the most fulfilling, and what has been the most challenging?
I think the most fulfilling part of the journey was the validation that I could do something like this, which is a very strong and a very important part of our lives for building self-confidence, especially during the time of the pandemic that we were all going through. So that, I think, was a big part for me in terms of when I finished it, I was like, okay, ye publish ho na ho, I have completed it, So that was a huge, most fulfilling part of it. The most challenging was, yes, to actually complete it, to wake up and sit down, the amount of distractions I had, because we are obviously, the television is right there, phone calls are right there, books are right there. There is so much distraction.
Right.
And the most interesting part is that when we don't want to do something, we subconsciously start doing something else.
Yes.
It's not a planned thing, right? It's like somebody is having a difficult conversation with you. Very subconsciously, our hand goes to our phone, and we kind of start looking at it. It's very subconscious.
Of course.
So yeah, that was, I think, the most challenging part, to keep the discipline going.
Great. Okay, so we'll take this one last question. It's again from Param. And what is the most heartwarming review that we have received?
Oh, that's a difficult one. I think most people have been very, very kind and very loving in terms of their reviews, even the ones who do not know me personally. But I would remember this one person who reached out to me after reading my book, somebody I do not know personally. She reached out to me through Instagram and said she read my book and she found it extremely relatable. She spoke about the time when she was going through a very difficult time. She was battling depression for almost 14 years.
Oh,
and what she experienced. So when she read my book, there was a lot of things that she could relate to. And she recommended that book to her sister and a couple of her friends, the I think the biggest compliment to me was when she told me that she recommended my book to her therapist.
Oh,
I think
okay.
that was something that I can never forget, and I'm extremely grateful for that. That has been the biggest compliment because I am not a therapist. I simply wrote it as maybe somebody can read it and feel and reach out and want to help. So yeah, I think that was the most heartwarming review.
Great. So I think we are on top of time, but I think that's quite a positive note to end the session with. And just one thing left, which of course cannot be done in this session. I'm yet to get this book signed. So I guess you are based in Mumbai, but whenever you get a chance to visit any bookstores in Delhi, of course, I would like to get this signed from your end.
Yes.
So look
I will
forward.
be in Delhi next month. I will see you.
Okay, definitely. All right. Thank you very much, Pragati. It was nice interacting with you. And thank you to all the audience who have joined the session. Thank you to all of you.
Thank you so much, Abhishek. It's been absolutely wonderful. It's been really, really lovely talking to you. Thank you so much. And thank you, everybody, for joining. Thank you so much.